Hi, I'm Jamie Smart, and welcome to the podcast. And as you may know, I've long been fascinated with exponential technology and its impact on us and our world. And with that in mind, I've decided that in this season of the Get Clarity podcast, I'm going to be having conversations with people who can share insights to help us navigate this rapidly changing landscape from a psychological and a spiritual perspective. Now, my first guest is Jeff Booth, a friend whose work I've been exploring for several years. Jeff's a best-selling author, he's a tech entrepreneur, and a very deep thinker. And he's one of the founding partners of Ego Death Capital, a fund for investing in technology startups. And Jeff coaches and mentors the tech entrepreneurs and teams that the fund invests in. And here's the thing that had me realize he'll be a great guest for the podcast. I was reading his superb book, The Price of Tomorrow, and many of the things he said let me know that Jeff understands something really worth knowing about who we really are. Then, as I listened to some of his interviews, I realized he has a very practical understanding of how life works that I'd love to explore more deeply with him and to share with you. Now, one thing, I had to listen to Jeff share his perspective a number of times before I really got what he's pointing to. So this may be one you want to come back to again and again. Just before we get to that, I wanted to mention that the doors are now open for the January 2025 intake of our flagship Clarity Certification Training Program. Just go to jamiesmart.com/coach. That's jamiesmart.com/coach. So now to the episode. So Jeff, welcome and thank you so much for being here today.
Glad to be here, Jamie. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's a pleasure. And I first became aware of you in 2021. I heard you, I don't even remember where, on a podcast or something, and I grabbed your book, The Price of Tomorrow, which I love. I've read a couple of times, and I've spent a bunch of time really immersing myself in your ideas and your perspective on things. And I thought a great place to start would be something you wrote in the book that really jumped out at me. This was something that you're telling the story about the startup you did, and at a certain point in that journey, and you said, in the end, I realized that the things in life I valued most, family, friends, integrity, weren't contingent on business outcomes and couldn't be taken away from me, no matter what. Framed that way, all the challenges and risks of running a business were eminently more manageable. In that formulation, the riskiest proposition of all is to lose sight of who I was. To betray myself was the only way to truly fail. And for that reason, I left with nothing but with everything. Jeff, I'd just love to hear from you. How did you come to realize that? Because that seems such a pivotal discovery.
How do you, I just, in that book, I wrote, I wrote something that kind of predicted where AI, artificial intelligence, would be, and you know, kind of from reading it and where we are now, it's predicted it pretty perfectly. But bigger than that, I wrote error correction is intelligence. Just if you look at our biological brain, error correction is intelligence. It's just, and computers are trying to mimic that through silicon rather than biology. And you know that's true because you get better and better at things, and you hit walls, and you and things you focus on more you're better at. You see patterns easier, so you know that that's true. And so somebody asked me years later, they said, "Then what's wisdom?" And I said, "A lifetime of error correction." and and so you asked, how did I get to that?
Yeah, how did you? Because it's
I don't that, and I guess that's what I'm trying to get to.
Yeah.
Through a lifetime of seeing what was important in my life, seeing mistakes I made, through belief systems that I would hold on to, and blame an external event or wonder why it was happening. And when I realized it was just really, it was all me. It was all a perception, and to look inside, just the mirror of who I was a reflecting back at the world, and so, but that it wasn't one thing. There wasn't one thing. There were a whole bunch of different things we could describe. I could go into some of those things if you'd like, because they provide useful, um, uh, e- e- uh, my learnings through getting to it probably produce a useful roadmap for others that would be dealing with the same thing.
Oh, well, that would definitely be fascinating. You just mentioned something about kind of the mirror, and that's another thing I heard you talking about, which really struck me. You said that when you meet someone within 2 minutes of conversation, it's like they've got a sign on their head saying where they're getting in their own way and that sort of thing. Speaking to you as a coach, that's profoundly valuable.
Yeah.
Uh, and so I'd love to hear anything you can tell us about that. Like, what is it that lets you know uh, that?
So, in business and in life, because all a business is a collection of people, right?
Mhm.
With value. So we have to be at the center of that. And you can see, and many people, many of your coaches could see in many people, that they tell the world a version of what it is, and inside there's a different version that's blocking that. Um,
Mhm.
how do I get into it?
Almost always, in fact, the
Almost always,
story
and
about what's getting in the way turns out to be very different from what's
very
actually
different.
getting in the way.
Yeah, very different. And if you've coached people for a long time, you can see that.
Yeah.
The problem is it's so hard to see in yourself. That's we live 99.9% of the time in our own movie, with us as the center of the movie, and how we matter, and what are things that other people are doing blocking into our movie, versus understanding that their movie to them looks similar, right?
Yeah.
And so in seeing this in seeing this in myself, what I realize is virtually everything we do, um, is in service of love and belonging. um, Virtually everything, and try to find something that isn't, other than food and the basic needs. But even a bunch of that is, you want to matter to somebody else. That's why we do that. So most of our actions are in service of that, whether we're aware of that or not.
Mhm.
And 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 then it's not about money. It's about love and belonging. It's why we want to matter. So I use often the victim analogy, because
Mhm.
it's easy to see in people.
Yeah.
And the victim shows up, and if you'd ask a question to most people, that you'd say that person just doesn't get it, right? The why are they like that? If you'd ask it differently, why are they doing that? And they're trying to get love and belonging, right? And so from something in their past, some experience, something with their parents that was a breakup, that something in their past caused, when I do this, people come to me,
Yeah.
right? And it feels great. And then they use that trigger, or that thing, to try to get people to come to them, and everybody can see it. Everybody knows, and it gets harder and harder to be around that person, and all the people move away. So what does that person do? They double down to
Double down on it.
to come back. And so why I use that example is not because it's way bigger than the victim and analogy. It's way bigger. But why I use that example is, what happens on both sides of that. On one side of it, we see that person, and we don't tell them. They have a sign on their forehead that everybody can see,
Mm.
and no one tells them. And you ask, why? And the simple answer typically comes out, I don't want to hurt their feelings. But that's not true, because
Mm.
those people that don't want to hurt their feelings have no problem telling everybody else, right? So you have this energy that's going into what this person's like, that the person is completely blind to. They have no idea. And all people on both sides are wasting their time, right?
Mm.
Because nothing's changing. And then every once in a while, you find somebody that will turn the sign around, but do it in a way that, I care so much about you, I have to do this. I'm telling you this. And sometimes that can change. It's a 0 to 1 moment for both people. It produces that bonding. Why did both do it? Why does it produce bonding? Because of love,
Mm.
right? Because it's true. Um, so so and that takes to it, it just totally changes both people in a
Mm,
in a very profound way. It doesn't always work, but when you're doing it in a position of love,
mm,
then it comes across as, I don't care if you change,
mm,
right? You can be this, I just have to tell you,
mm,
right? And I won't tell anybody. I won't talk about it ever again, but I have to tell you. So so in uh, so we know that that's true on both. We know kind of when we look at the world, when we look at different people, that's what it looks like, right? We tell stories to everyone else about what
right.
those other people are like. We don't see what's in our own way because nobody tells us. Or very
Mm,
few people tell us in a way we can hear it. We know that's true. And then that person stays stuck. And what I would say is love is all around them all the time. Because if I was walking down the street with that person, we would see two totally different worlds, but they would both be true
mm,
from our perspective, right? And I would see it, and my world would see abundance, and I would see it would see love everywhere. It would see, and that would be, I have to do this to get it, right? And that perception actually creates the world that they each see, each person sees. Now, this is one tiny example.
mm,
Use a different example. What about the person, and what I talked about, what you opened up your quote with in my book, is, what about money? What about the so why does somebody with unlimited means, or just a lot of means and everything else, constantly go after more money? For the very same reason the victim can't see that love's all around them, because it's all around them all the time. And so what they do often is they push everyone away that's close in their life for the chase of money, and they can't see that they're pushing away. And so what does their family do as they push away? They try to, what are you doing? What are you doing? And the person would say, I'm doing it for you,
yeah.
right? And they can't see in their own way that they're the exact same person as the victim, but for a different thing. And it's all out of, they truly believe they're doing it for somebody else,
Mm,
right? And so and so that if you just look at the world through, we're all in service of love and belonging. You can see, and you could take this to any degree. You could take it to, why do certain people on the internet um kind of hate back and forth and back and forth, and they're constantly driving this, because there's a whole bunch of other people that will reinforce their actions on how great they are
mm,
for doing that, and they can't get to a higher level of understanding, because it would mean leaving that tribe, that love that they feel,
mm.
even though it doesn't look like that to everyone. I mean, it looked like that to a bunch of your coaches, but to that
And
person, it looks like that.
the thing with all these kinds of perceptions is they look so real, like that for each of us. We live in this perceptual experience that looks like an actual reality. A couple of, I mean, you said, so there was so much in what you said, Jeff. One of the things I heard you say is sometimes someone will be willing to point it out. And my experience is that the feeling of, like, for coaches, for instance, the feeling of love and connection is almost like a WD-40 that makes it kind of safer or more available to point out those kind of things. My I'd love your take on this actually. My experience is that for people to really hear something like that, they got to kind of feel safe. And so there's something about coming from a genuine spirit of love and connection. Like you said, I I'm saying this because I need to tell you, there's something about that genuine feeling of love and connection that seems to open up people's ear, make it safe for people to hear something. I know you coach entrepreneurs and tech entrepreneurs and people who are, doing projects within your fund. I imagine, though perhaps incorrectly, that a lot of those people are experiencing stress, pressure, deadline, all the things that go along with that. How do you go about pointing these things out to those folks when necessary?
So, so because I saw this in myself, and it was such an unlock to
Mhm.
everything, I started to ask myself, um, every single thing that isn't exactly, it doesn't feel really easy. The natural trigger would be it's something else. I turned the mirror inward and I said, then it has to be me. It is me. If it's me, if it's everyone else I can see, if everybody is walking around with these signs, and you truly move to, and you know that it's all in service of this, then you are too.
Mhm.
And so at first I found it in me, and after finding it in me, and how do you really do that? There are a couple different ideas on this, but how do you really do that when it's not when it's so not obvious and it has to change everything about you, like deep to the core that you saw something different and it completely changes you, and then you see the output of that when most people won't, because those things that are locked up inside us,
Mhm.
okay, from our childhood, how we perceive a child or our childhood experience or something else. They're like, and they're also responsible, or we deem them responsible for a bunch of the good in our life. Right. So we don't want to investigate those things. So I just
Mhm.
but once I saw that in me and it was true in me, it was it was so enlightening in me that I could walk around and I could see it in everyone. Like I could literally walk around and I could feel their energy and see that and let them be them, whoever they
Mhm.
are. But actually, if I wanted to spend any time, I had to be honest with myself and tell them. And and so this isn't just, I don't think about myself as a coach at all.
Mhm.
I think about it as people I want to spend time with. Anybody that I want to spend time with, I have to get to this type of depth. Otherwise, I won't spend time. And 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 here's just another hack or a way that a process that I realized that was we all went through, but we didn't know we go through. So think about people that are really close in your life, like that that you couldn't see them. If you didn't see them for 10 years, it wouldn't matter that the next day
Mhm.
you're just on, right? Everybody has a couple people like that.
Yeah.
But normally when you say that close, that it's actually only a couple people,
Yeah.
right? And how did you get to be friends with them like that? And probably what happened is you went through a series of events in a short amount of time, whether it was school, military, something else, and you saw who was there always.
Mhm.
They were always there for you, love and
Mhm.
connection, right? And how did you get to that? How did you get to that? It was either forced upon you from being close to somebody in a while, um, or uh, uh, or through a long enough time that I call it kind of this trust kind of pyramid, and vulnerability based trust, and somebody has to go first,
Mhm.
and then the other person has a choice of going down deeper or objecting and not going down deeper, just staying shallow.
Yeah.
And as each person goes deeper and deeper, and you can see who we all are at the bottom, at the bottom of that, you have people that are so close, so much love, that doesn't matter, right?
Mhm.
They could do anything, you know, they're there for you, or you're there for them.
Mhm.
So I thought, that's really interesting because it happens to us, but it happens in these moments. How do you hack that process and make it happen all the time?
Mhm.
And I just thought, it's easy. Just go first. Um, because you have this pyramid and most people have like a ton of relationships at the top that are these thin nonsense
Yeah.
relationships. Um, and what if you could invert the pyramid so all of the, like, you had hundreds, thousands of people here that you'd do anything for, they would do anything for you, that way. So what would it look like? And because if it happens to you in these moments, and it happens because of vulnerability based trust, and you could just change your framework and go first. right?
Mhm.
And so anyone you spend time with, it was your obligation. I'm not saying that the moment you meet somebody, you want to tell them all the darkest secret, but here's the thing that, like, but you would just be honest with yourself and go through, and what you'd find is they would be with you too. So
Mm.
I created it. I created from that. Um, and that's what that quote references. The abundance in relationships, and it's stupid. It's hard to describe what I have in relationships and people that super deep, how the depth of those relationships. It would be, it would sound like bragging.
Yeah.
But it's just hard to describe how powerful and how many people that I really care about at that depth.
I love that, Jeff. And there are a couple of things that I hear you opening up for people. And the first is like we live in a world where so many people are feeling lonely, disconnected, that sort of thing. I I often have conversations with people who have the experience of no one ever really actually listening to them. And yet what you're describing is it's possible for anyone listening to this, including me, to uh, experience a degree of love, connection, belonging, abundance with numerous people in their lives, like, countless people in their lives. And all it requires is the willingness to go there first themselves.
Yeah. And it requires more, because a lot of times it's not just that. So that just unlocks something deeper that you find. If you just realize that you do the same thing, like if you look around and everybody does it through
Mm,
their own try to getting loving belonging, then you must realize that you do too.
yeah,
So that has to mean the things that you want in your life that aren't abundant. That, I mean, it's not easy, like really easy. Has to be you.
yeah. Well, say more about that, Jeff, because what I heard you say a couple of times is, and I know that the domain of abundance for a lot of people, uh, often the first place they go with it is kind of money, success markers, that sort of thing. But when I hear you
Yeah, I'm
talk
not.
about it,
I'm not talking about that.
yeah, yeah,
But
I'm hearing it in the broadest sense of the word. The because to me anyway, the real source of abundance, what abundance truly is a feeling that we're
yeah,
living in. It's an experience of life. And so what I'm hearing you say is that for everyone who's listening, that's available to you right now. That's available right now. Uh, but for our but for our misguided attempts to find that somewhere where it isn't. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that's what I.
that's actually what I'm saying. So by trying to get it so hard, most times they're pushing it away. That's what I said
Yeah,
about the victim. So they're so desperate for it
yeah,
that they're pushing it with all their might. And as they push harder, doubling down, it's more elusive.
yeah,
And they cannot see that it's them. That's why I use that example. And you could take that in any single part of your life, and you could say that that means that the only way you could see the thing that is so elusive is it is you.
yeah. Well,
It's
I
it,
heard you use a brilliant metaphor for this, Jeff. You said it's so simple. You said when you look at a group photograph that you're in, where's the first place your eye goes? And unless I'm unique, mine goes to the same place as everyone else's, which is you look at yourself
what do I
first,
look like? How do I look like in the movie? Right?
right?
Yeah.
And that
You're,
to
you're
me,
the star. You're the star of your movie.
yeah. And so that to me, that tells me that's where your attention is going in some ways every moment where we're in, except when we lose sight of ourselves and are fully either focused on someone else or fully lost to the moment, whatever it might be. And so to me, just that notion that well, I love the way you put it, anywhere where it isn't easy, it must be you doing
So
it.
that's actually how you find it. That's how you find it. If you're truly, I'm I'm going to give you a something, one of the unlocks for me in this, in business. So in business, I read a book called Who, and it's how it was about hiring, and it was all about people. It wasn't about what you did as a business. It was just about people. We were hiring the best people, A players. And one of the first questions, one of the questions that you do in the interview process for kind of a 10-15 minute interview. So I've done this probably tens of thousands of times.
Mm.
One of the questions is okay, who did you report to at your last job? Jim Parks. Okay, could you spell that for me? Like anybody could spell Jim Parks, but you asked to spell it, and that's the important part. And what will Jim say on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being terrible, 10 being exceptional, about your performance when I talk to Jim?
Mm.
And there was always a pause, and then the next words out of their mouth were the number, and then the next words out of their mouth were the reason for the number. You only ask for the number,
Right.
but they always. And so what I can tell you is, it wasn't what they would say about what they think. They have to get into Jim's mind.
Right.
Tell you what Jim would say. And so when they get into Jim's mind about what Jim would say, because they know you're going to call him,
Yeah.
they say 9 or 10, and then the next words out are all of the things they did together that created incredible journey. 8, 9, 10. It was all is that, and then all the 2, 3, 4, 5, 6s were the excuses and why Jim was terrible. And then you just went, okay, great, because I didn't want to hear any of the number. Besides the number, I didn't want to hear anything anymore after asking this tens of thousands of times. I didn't need
Yeah.
to. And then you'd go to their next job, the one before that, and you'd say, okay, who did you report to there? Rosie Parks. Okay, spell that name. Okay, what will Rosie say when I talk to Rosie? And they would repeat the same story, right? So the same basic
Same pattern every time.
pattern every time.
Yeah.
And what you realize is the 8s, 9s, and 10s, you could say, we're going to the moon next month. We're going to find a way, right? And they would be celebrating everybody around them and finding a way to do it. And the 3, 4s, and 5s were always victims of the circumstance, and they were always. It just kept on repeating and repeating. I've found that I've found it incredibly insightful that these people couldn't see in themselves that they were the person, even though in the question it was so obvious, because they kept on saying the same thing.
Right.
And even in just in that question, they should be able to see it.
Yeah.
So I did what any crazy person would do. I ran a thought experiment on myself on that. So I went on a thought experiment. So just in my own mind, I went to asking myself through the mind of my board at that time. But here's the thing: I changed the thought experiment. I changed the question in my mind. I asked not what would Jeff's performance be, but said what would Jeff's performance be on innovation. So I caveated it so I would get the answer, right, that I wanted, so that the board members in my mind would answer 9s and 10s.
Right.
Went, oh my God. Oh my God.
Like you caught yourself caveating?
I caught myself.
Yeah.
I can't even face the truth. So I asked the real question, and the board, and in that, the board members would all have answered 5 or 6 on the whole on the whole thing. And then from there I went to all of the reasons they were wrong, and I caught myself again. And it was so enlightening that I went, wow, I know all this, and I do it too. So then, so I created these frameworks in my life to constantly ask if I can't see it. And even knowing this, how hard it is to see in yourself because you don't want to face these things. You don't even want to ask the questions. What are some frameworks that you can ask in your own life? And I ask that question to myself each day about what each of my kids would say,
Right.
what my wife would say, what different business relationships would say, what different and if it's not a 10, it's me.
Right. And what's the question you ask? Is it always
Yeah, just what on a scale of 1 to 10, how does Jeff show? Like, what's a Jeff performance, or in this relationship, on what's
right?
your relationship with your dad? What would your kids say?
And the thing that struck me as I listened to you is that difference between, like, what I heard is that there's a shift in perspective from me to we as they as the numbers move closer to 10, that it's much more. I got a sense of collaboration, uh, sharing successes, that sort of thing. Is that is that just a function of, as we pull our gaze away from the kind of singular focus on how am I looking in the picture, that we naturally go to that abundance and love and connection? What's your
Yeah,
sense of that, Jeff?
your ego gets killed through that process,
Mm,
and you see the same love and belonging that you were chasing through things that were pushing it away,
mm,
not just available to you, but every single person. You see it in everyone. You see it literally as one energy field,
mm,
and we're all in it. And you see it, you literally see it in everyone. And so that becomes that, and once you do, it just everything becomes really easy.
mm. That is really, really powerful, because I've never heard anyone make the connection between experiencing kind of the energetic truth of who we really are, love, connection, that, and ease of making things happen, getting things done, bringing things to life in the world. What do you see as the connection between those two?
I really do see it so the first, I said in a YPO forum, yesterday, I said to highly achieving people, meditate, it works. And I said, do you realize that right now, in the shape of the world, that even if you think you can rise above it, everybody else is, we're listening to this what's happening in the world, and it's hurting them. It's at their soul hurting them, and they're fearful, and they see P Diddy, or they see Iran, or Israel, and they see Ukraine and Russia, and they see all of these things, or they see the presidential elections, and they take a side of each of these things,
Mhm.
and they're giving it their energy, it's stealing their energy, and then when they come to talk to you, that energy so it has to affect you. What we do
Mhm.
in the world, um, what we do in the world impacts everyone else. We are so if you live, and this is kind of we don't have to get here or not, but if you live in a world that's extractive, and you're trying to win in that world that's extractive, then you're bound to make that extractive world worse. And so that's so so you have to first realize that just about everybody is living in that world, and they're measuring from that world. And you have to have empathy, or you don't have to, but if you had empathy, if you really saw the depth of who we really are, how we're really connected,
Mhm.
you can see that each person in that is operating in the same way that I was, and pushing things away or from their own viewpoint. And from that extractive world. But now you could say, how do I stay above that when it's trying to drag me in? When it's trying to when and how do when all of these relationships impact everybody else, because we literally it's a we uh, everything you do impacts someone. So when you see that and you're on top of this extractive economy or extractive system, and you're living in it and measuring it and trying to win within it,
Mm.
for your family, for it's bound to lock in these patterns worse, right? And if we can't see them, then you can imagine how most people are actually experiencing life.
Yeah.
It's nowhere close to how I'm experiencing life.
Jeff, two things occur to me. One is, I think it would be incredibly valuable, uh, just as many of those unlocks as that you could share with people. I think that would be incredibly valuable. Like I remember you saying one, which is just make a decision never to talk behind anyone's back, and that alone is a huge unlock. So from the sound of it, you said there was a roadmap of how you got there. So I know people would love to hear more of those unlocks. And I think also people would, there would be so much benefit in hearing your take on the extractive economy, what the solution to that is, and how people, one of the things that I've found very inspiring listening to you is the way in which you've made the decision kind of not to participate in the extractive economy and put all your energy into a new paradigm. So I think both the whatever unlocks you'd be happy to share and your perspective on this paradigmatic shift, because when I first read about it in your book, which I highly recommend to everyone, Price of Tomorrow is one of a handful of truly new paradigm books I've read in my life. So I recommend it to everyone. Um, but yeah, just hearing how you've managed to shift your energy, your attention from an extractive economy to this new paradigm. I think both those would be fascinating.
Yeah, and I think actually they go hand in hand because a lot of the things, as I was going deeper on myself and questioning the same thing, how I show up, some of those insights are kind of in the book already, and some of those insights are, um, why does it look like this?
Mm.
Right? Why does the world look like this? And so I'm a technology entrepreneur primarily, and so I couldn't. So if we went into the thesis of the book, I couldn't understand why with how fast technology was coming at us, why prices weren't falling everywhere.
Mm.
And because technology, if you just say, what is technology? Technology is the things we create out of our minds to create more value.
Mm.
And the only way that they could work is they create more value for other people because they're competing against things that came before them. Um, and that value that they create is deflation.
Mm.
So it means it, and actually, if you try to even go higher than that, the natural state of the free market is deflation because we only use things that give us more value. So we're a part of a system that has to have the output as deflation prices fall. Um, and 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 kind of bigger into economics, prices fall to the marginal cost of production in a free market. So why and why is that? Is because somebody creates value where something was scarce before, and they create value, and then competitors chase until and while there's a penny of profit, they'll still chase until it's
Yeah.
free. That's why the calculator app on your phone is free. It's why a line of code and most digital things are free. And so
Mm.
where we're going, if you ask, what about a line of code created by other lines of code with AI? That's all free.
Yeah.
And then when that merges with robotics, and prices, and then competitors, because you can make money on robots that are of general intelligence, and then competitors race in because there's money to be made, that goes to almost free. So, so if the natural state of the world is faster and faster deflation, and by the way, the world that I'm describing, every year you would get richer, even if you did nothing.
Mhm.
Right? So, because I didn't say inflation of zero. I said deflation.
Yeah.
Right. So that means this year, if it didn't work, you would get 5% richer, and next year you'd get 10% richer, and the next year you'd get 20% richer. That's the world. As abundance was all around you, and you used the natural state of the free market to trade with people and unlock more brains
Mhm.
to solve problems. The it would just it would happen faster and faster and faster. So this is what I described or tried to describe in the book. But that system that I described, in 5,000 years of human history, we've never seen the system that I just talked about.
Right.
Right? We saw, and that means no one alive today has an understanding of this paradigm shift. Because how do we learn? We learn off previous models, right? In previous history, then we infer the next, and this change is so profound because what I just described, the natural state of the market we should be living in, all connected, all in service of each other, 8 billion people in service of each other, right? It's such a mind bender
Mhm.
because we live in an extractive economy that how do you extract if you're the British Empire, right? For years, the sun never sets on the British Empire. You 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 take people's resources, you expand your army, you expand your ships, and you take people's resources, you take their gold, and you have slaves all over the world and colonies all over the world where you're extracting from them. If you're today, you do that through a monetary system, that the monetary system creates modern day slavery everywhere because inflation is wage deflation. So you create more units of currency to stop prices from falling.
Mhm.
And those more units of currency make prices rise relative to the currency. Right. And what it is actually stealing from people through 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 a currency layer. Now, and that stealing from people has massive externalities and other costs because you live on an extractive system
Mhm.
that you would not, most people on this call, it's just too big an idea to get it the first time.
Yeah.
Most people, right? But most people on this call would say, well, there's an economy can't work with deflation,
Mhm.
right? Because they're so programmed into, I have to have inflation for the economy to work. And ask why. Because what you're really saying is an economy can't work if we have free trade with each other, right? You're saying there has to be somebody stealing money for an economy to work. And then ask, if that's the case, who wins by the stealing?
Mhm.
Who loses? What would your life look like as politics on top of that just divided against who gets more of the money that comes from you, right? And what would the free market look like in that? It would have to centralize. Government would have to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And then all of the coaches coaching their businesses in this volatile and thing would be, okay, how do we get more government funding?
Right.
Or how do we do because it was sucking out the free market as it was doing it. And so and and from both perspectives would be true. So
Mhm.
what Bitcoin is, and that I shudder to even say that on your podcast, because most people would have a bad perception of what it is caused by the existing system looking at this
Yeah.
perception. Right. But if you, instead of saying Bitcoin, if you said an open, decentralized, and secure protocol, so like the internet, a
Mhm.
protocol open to anybody, decentralized, nobody could control it, secure, nobody could hack it, no government, no one could hack it. If you
Mhm.
had that protocol bounded by energy, then it wouldn't care about the pieces of paper most people were measuring their world in. Right. So you might. So but it would just it would keep repricing the entire world.
Mm.
Well, most people were pricing it from the piece of paper. And most people, even that understand Bitcoin, take Bitcoin to the US dollar to then price the world.
Mm.
And, and, but if you don't, and then they think Bitcoin's going up. But if you don't, and you just say it's the first global free market that we've ever seen, and all prices will fall against it forever, and you take prices of things like my home that in 4 years ago in the existing in a fiat currency was $1.4 million and now is $2.1 million. And 4 years ago in Bitcoin was 100 Bitcoin and is now 20 Bitcoin, 22 Bitcoin. And 4 years from now, it'll be 2 to 4 Bitcoin, right?
Yeah.
You can see all prices relative to this, not when it happens, it is happening.
Mm.
It's bounded by energy. Then this open decentralized protocol is, and it's just an honest system.
Mm.
So now ask yourself this: if a lot of the conversation that we've been discussing is really about us at the center of the world, that we bend reality, we always have. So something is scarce, it creates something in the market that we overcome with our minds, and we create everything that that has ever been. Right, everything that we take for granted comes from that process. So how does that process work in the free market? It comes from the scarcity. Scarcity leads to abundance because that scarcity, it's all these entrepreneurs are chasing a way to do it better.
Yeah.
So 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 if you, instead of having scarcity drive that process, if you have abundance and money, you have scarcity everywhere else.
Yeah.
Scarcity in money provides abundance through the process I just described. So what Bitcoin is doing is it's actually leading to abundance through that process. But and this is why it's such a big topic. If you zoom out of that and it just said if life is an emergent process, if what you do is an emergent process, and the base layer of that process is trade, right, of trying to solve problems for each other around the world, what would that look like for you and everyone else on a system that must steal more and more of your energy and time by manipulating currency? And who would win? What would it look like? It would describe, the mirror of that system would describe the world that most people are looking through.
Yeah.
It would look exactly. And what would they do by trying to win in that system? They would give it more energy trying to, but you're playing prisoner's dilemma where everybody's getting worse.
Mm.
And whether they're winning in a monetary value, but trading their soul for it, right? Or whether they're extracting from somebody in Ghana because of this monetary system that, and they can't see it, and they go donate to somebody there that is living in poverty from the very exact same system. It's way deeper than they think. It's and so it perpetuates the same thing because they're trapped into that system, and you can't solve a system problem from the system creating the problem.
Yeah.
And so Bitcoin, it asks the similar question: what would life look like on something that couldn't be manipulated, that gave no more control to one person or another, couldn't be stolen from? That the output of the trade with humans and was prices fall for all other humans forever. What would that look like? Was it just simply what would your life look like on an honest system versus a dishonest system? And
And
and and as you, by the way, and sorry to go so long there,
no, go for it.
but as you start to understand that, and for me, understanding that at a deeper and deeper level, you just realize and I was a hypocrite in this at first too, because I knew this new system, and then I owned Bitcoin. I was talking about it all over the world, and I knew it was the only plausible path to be able to transition from this dying, decaying system that was hurting people to this new system. And I was still 90% of my time was in boards and different things inside the old system. I woke up one day and I realized, wow, right? I saw it in myself. I needed to move my energy to the system I wanted for my kids, to the system I wanted for the world. So I just stopped all of the other things and I moved all of my energy, or the predominant amount of my energy, into this new system. And similar to these other examples, these unlocks, by doing so, just everything it just got better. And so I wanted to move. You wanted to move. You moved a little bit of time, then you moved more time, then you moved all your time, and every time you took that step, everything got better.
That's so cool to hear. And it brings us to the name of your venture capital fund, actually, which is Ego Death Capital.
Yeah,
Uh, I've heard you say that you didn't actually come up with the name, which was a shocker for me. How did that name come about?
came up with from Nico and Andy, my partners, in it, and it's awesome. It's
Yeah.
the but yeah, it was their idea.
And the thing that strikes me, Jeff, because I've been exploring this, and for people who are hearing about this for the first time, I know the first time I heard it, I was like, there's something here, but it sort of broke my brain trying to make sense of it. But I've explored your work and listened to it, and it makes more and more sense. What I'm hearing even more clearly today is the direct connection between the the honesty of turning your sign around and seeing, you know, what you're putting out into the world, and the honest system that's um, uh, well, I heard someone describe money as a language, and that if the money is being corrupted through money printing and that sort of thing, it's introducing lies into that language of value, and it really aligns with what you're describing.
Yeah, I describe it as information. Like all money is actually information. And think about this through the lens I just said. Money is information, and because you don't want more money, it's
Mm.
just a piece of paper, right? It's a ledger, right, of what you have. So in the world where money is being manipulated, it's just a piece of paper. So you don't want more pieces of paper. You want the feeling of what you think money buys you. Right. And what you think money buys you, that's where it goes back into love and connection. It's mostly about that. It's
Mm.
mostly about providing safety or certainty for your family. It's mostly about sometimes it's about, so I'm remembered long after I die, I can leave this gift to my heirs. Right. But that means it's about love and connection. It's about, so
Yeah.
I can take a trip with my family. It's about it's about those things. It's about the feeling, which is love and connection, that you
Yeah.
get from having enough pieces of paper.
Yeah.
So if it's information, if all it is information describing the feeling, and you apply misinformation to create more pieces of paper, then what will people do with their feeling? And what would misinformation look like inside a system of misinformation? It means every single person on top measuring from that misinformation must be getting invalid signals to their life.
For sure. I had a huge aha moment with this. I'd been running a kind of I'll be happy when I can achieve this and earn this and that sort of thing. This is back in like 2008. And I read The 4 Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss, and I was like, that's it. I need to have those mini retirements, and then I truly will have arrived. And my first mini retirement was in Whistler in BC. And 6 weeks in, and I was miserable. I'm like, oh my God, I've fallen for a trick. Not that there's anything wrong with Whistler or skiing or any of that stuff, but it's like it doesn't work that way.
Yeah, it's like there's no moment you're happy, right?
Mm.
This moment right now, I'm doing this with you, is the only moment, right? all other moments that zoom out. I'm not living in the past that got me to here. It's the past did get me to here. We're here right now, or the future that what it's this moment that matters. It's this moment that carries on over and over and over again and creates our life. So if the moments aren't abundant, right,
Mm.
or if they don't feel like that because your time is elsewhere, worried about this or worried about this, then how could there is no end, right? It's just like it's just the what you're describing is the illusion that people think one day I'll be happy when I do this, and it's just a trap.
Yeah. My buddy Chip Chipman says the feeling you're living in is all you get.
Yeah, I
It's,
love that.
yeah,
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 I love that.
just nailed it. Um, Jeff, I put out to my community to ask questions. So I've got a bunch of questions, which I'll ask as many of them as we can get through in the time. But any of them that give you the opportunity to share more hacks, feel free.
Okay. Okay.
um, so one of my guys, Ian, he asked, "What do you look for in a tech entrepreneur?" I think you may have answered that question when you were talking about the 1 to 10 question, but is there anything you'd want to add to that?
Yeah, so the idea has to be a big idea, but um, but probably the somebody that I can really care about, somebody that
Mm.
can that if, especially by the way, if you think about and through Bitcoin, um, then because they're going to be competed with by everybody, and there's no moats because of broken money, right? then then their business is going to constantly have to provide more and more value to people to be able to survive. That means it's a different type of business. You have to think about those people in a long-term relationship because you have to be so close that you can help them see things that they couldn't see before to be able to create the unlock for the new business. So I think about all things through people. I think
Mm.
most things through that. Yes, the idea and you develop frameworks in business, what will work, what won't work, and then and also just knowing myself. If you looked at who I was when I first started business, um, and how many stupid mistakes I made, like I mean, we could spend an entire podcast about that and laugh. Like
I may take you up
ridiculous,
on that.
ridiculous. And I think about some of the people I see now who are so far much further ahead than I was when I started.
Mm.
And so I think about that process now. Maybe I don't have all the answers too. I'm learning from some of the entrepreneurs as well. So I think about it through relationships and people that obviously the idea has to be something that can make a difference. The timing has to be there to be able to something that is right timing. But I think about people that I want to spend time with.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Um, Another question. This was from Dave in our community. He said, "I'd love to know what startups have Jeff most excited at the moment. What are they up to, and how will what they've got going on change our lives in ways we're totally unaware of?" And to
Oh,
me,
uh,
that opens the door to just so much that's going on.
there probably isn't a company in our portfolio that I couldn't say that about. So
Yeah.
it's hard to specifically go into because and why is that?
Mm.
Because the majority of the world is looking through this lens of the existing system, and the new system imposes rules. It imposes the free market
Mhm.
in a way nothing ever has before. So so it breaks people's brains. But
Yeah.
if you said Breeze or Fetty, I'll give you an example on Breeze as an example. Um, so uh, so the thing we talked about in Bitcoin layer one, so almost TCP/IP for the internet, layer
Yeah.
one, right? Is decentralized and secure and open, and nobody can break it. Right? It's unbreakable. More and more decentralized, more secure all the time. But how part of the stuff that allowed that to happen, it couldn't be used as a currency, because it could only do 5 to 7 transactions per second on the base layer. So then Lightning as a second layer became a currency, essentially a currency. You could move value anywhere in the world instantly, and that's getting better and better. And at first, Lightning, just like if you think about the internet emerging,
Yeah.
first Lightning, there were failures, there was channel lock, some things didn't go through, but it's getting better and better and better now. And Breeze took that model and they built deep, deep tech. What they did is they created an SDK on a software development kit on Lightning that you can, as a business, just plug it in, and now you have global payments, immediately in your app, in your app, or any business that you're creating, and then from there, they're going to share the fees, the tiny little fees on Lightning, instead, but not fees like Visa or MasterCard, pennies,
Yeah.
fractions of pennies on Lightning. But there's so many of them, and Lightning itself, on top of Bitcoin, is growing faster than the internet was.
Wow, I didn't know that.
I
That's
know, and
amazing.
people have no idea that it's growing that fast, and
Is that because of developing people in developing countries using it, or is it all kinds of?
it's all across but yes, developing countries, but it's growing at that rate. It's so staggering how
Mm,
fast it's growing, and people don't even know about it in developed countries, that they think at the rate. But what that means is that businesses that are incorporating this, Breeze can share Lightning fees with them. So instead of paying 2.5% to Visa, MasterCard, or anything else, you get paid for taking payments.
wow.
Like it's such a, and it explodes. And so as companies start getting paid for taking payments in Bitcoin, which is going up versus, right, the US dollar or any other dollar, it's going
Mm,
down. As they're going to want to take more payments in this, and there's no cost to it. They get paid for it.
mm.
So you have 100x type of value creation, and early businesses that are doing it then can share some of that with their customers who choose to pay in Lightning versus Visa. And you can see from that unlock. But all of these things, I think, even bigger than that, and instead of just different companies, these are protocol integrations. And that means what Breeze is doing tied to what Noster is doing in a decentralized protocol. All these things are interoperable together. To what Fedi is doing, and they're interoperable together, which means faster and faster development, and more development onto this new internet, this new parallel internet bounded by
Mm.
energy. That is exploding in value. So it's an incredible time.
And I think the internet is a great metaphor for it. Like if we think back to, the mid 90s, late 90s, when everyone was kind of scratching their head about the internet and email and that sort of thing, and look at how it's transformed the world. But that's what we're seeing with this as well.
Yeah, and remember, the internet started in the late 60s by
Yeah,
Darwin.
that's true.
It was actually 1969, 1968 until 1989, when Tim Berners-Lee was HTTP, and
Yeah.
HTTP was the fourth layer. So what I've described is Bitcoin in the first layer and the second layer in Lightning, and that's all I've described right now. So what's
Right. So
coming?
we're like 1975.
Yeah, but technology is moving so much faster,
Yeah.
and this system is breaking down because monetary. When you say liquidity, right? Just say I'm printing more pieces of paper, so relative to the pieces of paper, all prices will go up. That's what liquid. I'm stealing money and time and energy from society, from
Mm,
this system, and this system cannot steal.
mm.
Thou shall not cannot steal from this system. So it's repricing the system, and you know what I said? Every scarcity provides abundance.
Yeah.
As people feel that trapped into the system, and they're getting trapped, and they're seeing all the externalities all around the world, the people at the top of the system actually are enriched by the system. So So they don't want this new system that it takes. And but because we all have a choice, there is no they. It's just
Mm.
we, right? We all have a choice in this. That scarcity of this world kind of sucking into this this vortex of negative energy and theft. More and more people are moving their time
Mm.
over to into this new system. And that's what that new system is emerging. And all of that time, all those entrepreneurs, all of those people that understand kind of what I'm saying are just creating abundance from that, and what will be human flourishing from that in a system we've never seen before.
Well, I heard you just say there is no they, and how I made sense of that, Jeff, is by putting our attention, our energy, our focus into the new system and withdrawing our energy from the extractive system, there the the illusion of a they disappears.
That's exactly it. So that there is no they. We want to give more. So ask yourself, and the existing system that you have your house in, and your banking, and your corner store, and everything else, and that's the existing system. From a credit-based system, if you allow deflation, there is no money in it. The
Mm.
credit is the money. But if you allow deflation, the credit explodes. It just gets destroyed.
Yeah.
So ask yourself, no matter where you are in there, that at what point of everything, banks failing, no supermarkets, no everything else, at what point would you vote for more manipulation of money?
Right.
And everybody would. And so it's not that your leaders in that. And so
Mm.
you know for sure, right? What I just described, it's just printing money. And you know the leaders, what would the leaders look like if you didn't actually have a vote? And it's not a democracy because you have no vote in the amount of manipulation of money,
Sure.
right? So what would your leaders look like if it was more and more theft all the time and you were voting for more and more theft and you were really mad at the other side because they were trying to get control from that theft? What would your life look like?
I guess it would look like what we've got today in the world.
Like it's nuts. But and then you tell yourself that that other side would do this. Well, you don't realize it's you voting for it, your time sucking into it. That's creating the perpetual motion machine of negative externalities all over the world. And you would not vote for a system that allowed the abundance to flow to society, because the break from one system to another would be so catastrophic that you couldn't. So you needed you need a parallel path. You need a parallel path that is repricing this and providing all of the structure to allow humans to move their time to the new structure. And so once you understand that, you start to spend more of your time in the honest system.
I love it. Jeff, I know you've got a hard stop in a couple of minutes. I've got so many other questions I'd love to ask you, so maybe I can bring you back for a round two. But in the meantime, where's the best place for people to find out about you, about Ego Death Capital, and just to get more exposure to your work? Because I know for me, it was kind of like a sheep dip. I needed to go in a bunch of times before the light bulbs started to go on. I really started to get what we've touched on today.
So ego death would be a great one if an entrepreneur is looking for something. The ego death dot capital, the or jeffbooth.ca. And I say specifically, please be careful. There are so many. I'm not on Twitter anymore. I'm on Nostr, but any site that I'm on, I'll list it on jeffbooth.ca.
Okay.
And if it's not there, it's not me. There's just
And
somebody
you won't be
else.
DMing
Yeah,
people, inviting them to
exactly. I
take
will
part.
never ask for money.
Yeah.
So yeah, so yeah, if it's not listed on jeffbooth.ca, it's not me.
Wonderful. Well, I recommend everyone check out your work. I'm a huge fan of your book and your work, and I just thank you for what you're doing and for your time today, Jeff.
Right back at you. Yeah, right back at you.
Thank you. I look forward to seeing you again soon.
You too. See you, Jamie.
See ya. Thanks for listening. And if you're interested in finding out more about the Clarity Certification Training, just go to jamiesmart.com/coach. That's jamiesmart.com forward slash coach. Bye.